I, for the most part, completely agreed with him, whereas Brady is a moron.
Ooh. Very close to rolling off the edge of the table, but I got a 13.
Well, you beat me 7.
Jesus.
Oh.
Okay. So the one who probably has tied into the least of this conversation is going to introduce this conversation. Right. Well, welcome to Basement Discourse. We're here today as 3 gentlemen on a podcast talking about... yes.
Cheerio.
Duty. top of the morning to you.
Why are we Irish as well?
Because we can be.
We agreed one time, and he's like Irish immediately.
I was thinking British, because like you say gentlemen, and I'm not going to Australia. No way.
No,
Nah.
we are
No
definitely
chance.
not gentlemen here. Oh well.
Nah.
Well, there goes the intro. So we're going to talk about mini games inside of games. So games inside of games, the gameception, so to speak. Yeah, and take it away, boys.
That was a shit intro. Okay.
Terrible.
So, basically, we watched the second win video that Yahtzee put out, semi-ramblomatic. It was basically talking about card games within games, and then it sort of extended out beyond that. But I shared it with the guys, and I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I completely agree with everything. And then Brady chimed in with his usual stupid shit. And we're like, you know what? We need to argue about this IRL, or at least as close to IRL as we can get. And that sort of brings us to this.
So on that, Jace, you think this is a terrible idea? Like,
I think
games
there's
inside of
nuance
games,
to
you don't
it.
like it. You hate it.
Not quite. I think it has its place, but there's definitely problems with it. So,
And Brady, you just love the shit out of this?
No,
Oh, okay.
neither that. I have nuance
God.
as well. It's
No, he
I'm not
doesn't.
just full of like absolute bullshit camp. This is not
Right.
left-right politics. Like we're playing smart people, not fucking idiots.
I'm playing more on I like it. So I am the idiot.
This is the guy who hates fishing
I
games.
hate fishing mini games because they're just pointless though. But I do like a mini game inside of a game that is
So you have
good.
nuance. Yeah. Wow, he's got nuance. Who would have expected?
Well, alright.
But like, if we take it back to like the core idea that Yahtzee started with, and it's talking about card games, and like the moment he started talking about this, the first thing that popped into my mind is Triple Triad from Final Fantasy VIII, which I don't know if you've ever played Hearthstone, Justin, but it kind of plays a little bit similar to Hearthstone, but it's in Final Fantasy VIII from 1999 or whenever that came out. And I don't inherently have a problem with the game existing within the game. That's not the issue. I have 2 other problems. One is that pretty much after the first mission of the game, you are constantly chasing the evil, which evolves throughout the game, but you're constantly, in this battle for survival, for saving the planet. Like, there is a sorceress that's literally trying to compress time to rule all of time and the universe. And you're like, you know what? How about I just go play cards with Steve over there for a hot minute? Or, like, you can even play cards with, like, some of, like, the really important people within the story for no fucking reason at all. And then they've also got other weird stuff, like your character is supposed to be, like, a teenager at school. Like, the school is like a combat school, like a military school of sorts. But you can have cards of you. Why is there a card for Squall?
That is pretty weird.
He's just a student. Like, he's a
I think the point
nobody.
that Yahtzee had around these cards too was that, like, everyone has them. It's like the town guard, like this general like dude has them, and like then like these main people have them, and it's just like everyone's got these cards. Like, what the hell? Like, how popular is a game? Like, you don't walk down the street and play Magic the Gathering with, like, every second human you bump into. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of it as well, is that kind of pulls you away from the immersion of the game as well. So there's things like, you know, ignoring the urgency of things around you, the fact that everyone loves the game and like that as well. All of it feels really like we've put this game in here and we want you to know about it, but we want you to have all the options in the world so everybody loves it. Not everybody loves it. Like, even if you walked up to any random person and said, want to play a game of blackjack, not everyone, like, most people know how to play blackjack, but most people will be like, why are you talking to me?
One, why are you talking to me? Two, why have you got cards? Are you a magician? This is very weird.
Justin just showed up with hair.
Aha!
And the law ties in. I imagine it with like a really cheesy puff of smoke as well. Just,
Oh, God. You throw down a
I really
puff of
want to do
smoke
that
every
one time, and it's just you normal, and then you with hair in like a cape.
Fantastic. On cards in games, though, I think that probably the turning point where Yahtzee described it as well was for The Witcher. So Gwent, of course, was the very popular success story of minigames, I would call it, out of games. Because that thing became its standalone, of course, but due to popular demand as well. But they actually started making that. The devs of, whoever it is, CD Projekt Red, they started making it ahead of the release of The Witcher 3 because they knew it was going to be popular, and some of the devs were actually playing it in the lunchroom. So it caught on before it was even a thing. So, like, they knew they were onto a winning thing here. And that's probably the only example that I think is perfect as far as the cards go. Because not only did they tie it into the lore and inside of the game itself, they tied it in seamlessly. So I think there's only one part of it that you're forced to do, where you play with the Baron or something like that, and you play one card game, and that's it. That's all you have to do in The Witcher, unless you want to do more. But if you want to do more, then you're sort of tasked with going to the lands and trying to find all of the kings and things and trying to play off them to win their, like, rare cards. And that's where, like, the fun comes in, or as far as I'm concerned, it's fun, of collecting all of those, like, special cards along the way. Like, as a card collector as well, like, you know, collecting Pokemon, all the rest of those sort of things, getting, like, a rare, that's sort of part of the buzz. So, like, traveling the Witcher environment to go and get those, that's a really cool tie-in. So I think they did it really well. So, good example.
For the most part, I would agree. My only gripe is the mandatory part. And I do know that the mandatory Gwent game is kind of lore appropriate because it's like during some downtime and stuff like that. So it's not like, you know, whatever. But like, I do also find it weird that like the game just kind of lets you play it like pretty much right from the beginning. I'm pretty sure there's like a tavern on the way to, like, you know, when you're trying to find Yennefer at the very start of the game.
Yeah, right at the start.
And you can just off to the pub and just start playing Gwent, right? Like, that just feels wrong because the whole thing is you're supposed to be looking for her. And then you're like, nah, I'm just going to duck up and play a couple of hands. She'll be right.
I get that there's supposed to be urgency inside of games and whatever, but it's also, that's the freedom of open world though as well. So, you know, you're describing every other thing that you do. How about Skyrim and all the side quests when you're supposed to be saving whatever it is you're meant to be saving? The world, probably. I can't even remember how. I don't remember the true campaign of Skyrim anymore. That's how lost in side quests I got for so many years. I don't remember what happens. But that's my point though. Like, you know, even in that game where there are mini games. Okay, shit example. But even in that game, like, the side quests can take over, and suddenly the main story has been forgotten.
And you know what? That sucks too. And like, this is just a gripe.
What are you gonna do? You're gonna set timers and be like, oh, you failed the main mission, you lose.
Well, there are some interesting concepts with that. So, firstly, the whole urgency thing. One thing that Cyberpunk suffers from, as you would probably know, Justin, is the fact that your brain is pretty much melting and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to go play some arcade machines, or
Yeah.
I might go jam and listen to some bands. Don't get me wrong, that stuff is very fun, but when you step away for a moment and you actually think about it, you're like, what the actual fuck am I thinking? Like, why is that my character's motivation when everything's falling apart around me and I'm literally dying? Shouldn't I perhaps be working on that rather than trying to find the Batmobile in a random cave somewhere? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Instead of doing every other side thing.
none of this ruins games. I should clarify that. It's not like me dislike, like Final Fantasy VIII, as I was saying to Bonnie in Discord like 10 minutes ago, it's like my favorite Final Fantasy. I still think the card game's shit, and I still think it's weird in a world context.
So, I think this matters on whether we want to fully forget that we're players or not. Because I don't hate the idea that the world has shit going on in it and that people in dire situations find joy in things like card games. I don't actually think that breaks immersion at all. I think that can actually be of benefit to the world, because people live through... You look at The Witcher, that's a lot of years that townspeople are being haunted by dragons and griffins and shit. If they found no joy in anything, they all would have just given up already. Like, it makes sense that they've found a joint way of connecting and having a good time together. I don't think it ruins immersion at all. I only think it ruins immersion when it's forced. You guys did touch on that with The Witcher again. That was actually okay, because I think win or lose, the story just continues on just happily in that situation. So you don't even have to learn the game. You can just press a bunch of buttons and get your way through it. Who cares too much? But in a lot of games, it's much, much worse than that. The example Yahtzee used was in the new Final Fantasy game. Now, this is relevant because it's a new game, and it was fucking annoying. But it still wasn't fully compulsory. You could just opt out. You just had to opt out multiple times on multiple dialogues, and everyone kind of gave you shit for it. So it definitely felt like the creators wanted you to feel bad about it, and I didn't like it in there because I don't see why Cloud as a character would give a flying shit about a card game. There are many other characters where that would fit in fine. I don't mind Geralt playing. I don't think he'd be disgustingly invested, but I don't mind him playing. Cloud, I can't see caring in the slightest.
I definitely agree with that regard, because Geralt as a character, having read the books and things like that, he isn't inherently a man of urgency. He does his job. He knows what his job is. He does it efficiently, but he also partakes in fucking gambling, drinking, like just leisure in general. Like he doesn't inherently have any kind of issue with any kind of leisure activities, so it doesn't seem outside the realm of reality. But Square are known for this like guilting thing, because Final Fantasy IX does a similar thing. There's like a card tournament or something like that in like the third act, and you can skip it, but it asks you about 3 times, and as you try and opt out of it, it's like, you sure? Are you really, really sure? And then it kind of guilts you afterwards, and you're like, are you serious?
I'm wondering if maybe some of these are marketing ploys, you know? So Final Fantasy, for 100%. Instance, would be a prime example of a marketing ploy where they were hoping that one of these card games kicked off enough that they could start selling cards. Like, because money in cards is insane. Like, insane.
Yes and no, because you got to remember the mini game in 10 is not very marketable unless they make another game out of it.
I'm thinking that where Justin's going with this is they're remaking 7. 7 is hands down the most popular Final Fantasy title. So if they're going to be cashing in on what is already popular, and even though the remakes are a bit divisive, as in I hate them and everyone else seems to like them, I think that, you know, they've got enough of that hold of the market that they might have thought, if we make a card game, maybe people will buy into it. And they were kind of testing the waters by putting that in there. Like, makes sense.
Yep, pretty sure.
Yeah,
I think even God of War might have had a Ruins minigame. I didn't play it because it was terrible and because it's fast-paced hack and slash kind of game. I didn't really feel like doing that. Other games, though, I do think it makes sense. It makes sense for the character. I don't mind, as Justin mentioned, open world games. It has to make sense for the character or be a character similar to Skyrim where you are them as such. They don't have a personality. I don't mind that. I just think it's got to make sense in both the world and for the role-playing immersion. Outside of that, I don't mind so much. Like, even being forced to some degree, if it works with the character, the story, and what they're doing, I don't mind that hard. That said, it's so context dependent what I'm saying. Like, it's such an annoying point to bring up because with Skyrim I wouldn't mind. With I think Assassin's Creed has mini games, things like that. I don't mind so much in those games because the whole thing is just ticking boxes, right? Like you're just little quest, little quest, little quest, little quest.
But
it's not.
So there is one that kind of annoys me, even though it ticks all the immersion boxes. And I'm probably going to rustle some jimmies with this one. Ooh. But Red Dead Redemption 2. Now...
Oh, God. Was it the slap the balls so that they do that thing that the metal balls on a desk do?
No, it's the, fishing,
that's what they spent so
hunting...
long on the fucking horse balls for.
No, it's just like the fishing, the hunting, all that crap. Like, fair enough that it's somewhat relevant to the game. You don't actually need to do it, but they introduce it by giving you a, mandatory quest that introduces the concept as a tutorial. And so, I think the fishing one is that you're supposed to take your friend's son out for his first fishing trip or whatever.
Yeah.
And
I don't know, so when you think about the era, though, the era and the time that they were in, there were probably a lot of days where there was nothing happening.
100%. So I'm not going on that angle. It's purely the forced angle. And because Rockstar are notoriously bad with drawing out the length of a mission with needless meandering and walking from point A to point B, and Red Dead Redemption is notorious for that.
Yeah, that's the best example of the worst of it.
Yeah, and the game is fine. There's nothing wrong with the game, and if you're into the little fishing mini game, that's fine. But it's the fact that it was a 25-minute block of the game wasted to be a glorified tutorial for how to play a minigame. And even though they wrapped it in a lot of period correctness, it fit the story well and all of that, it was still annoying as shit. And I really would like to have been given an option to be that kid can piss off. He can go fish on his own.
That's fair. Yeah.
That one's... Yeah, I haven't got an argument for that. That sounds genuinely I would hate every second of that as well. The same reason I hate walking along behind a character who walks slower than me and there's no way to skip it. That just feels like an exaggerated version of that. Yeah.
But on the topic of Assassin's Creeds, the one you're thinking of is Orlog. That's the dice game from Valhalla, which was actually successful enough to make a little board game-esque thing out of. So you'll find that in EB Games and stuff still probably floating around. Yeah.
Don't promote those ass hats.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So it's 5 or 6 dice and some other pieces. I cannot remember the exact workings of it, but it did have a bit of a following, so it was fairly popular as well when it came out. So, yeah.
Yeah. These are the people who played an assassin as a Viking, though.
It was not the best tie-in for that world of assassins, but
not the smartest of fans.
I still have so many gripes with that game. If they just made a goddamn good Viking game, that wouldn't have been so bad.
Yeah.
It's always the complaint with Assassin's Creed, though. Like, just do what you're doing outside of this franchise.
Yeah,
please. Because trying to squish them in together is just fucking terrible.
Yeah, but that's the Ubisoft trademark, right? We've got this great idea, but we can't make a new IP, so how about we shoehorn it into one of our previous IPs? So
what's funny is that they didn't do that with Skull and Bones. They tried to make a whole new thing and they screwed it. So that's probably why.
That was worse too, because they already had the example of what to do that they had
just
done.
To copy Black Flag, and here we are. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So no wonder they want everyone to subscribe to their trash. It's because the only way people will keep f***ing playing it is if they're like, oh no, my monthly fee came out again. What games do they have? Like, that's all. That's all. No, I think there's enough nuance discussed there anyway. Like, it's not that I hate minigames by any means. I do agree they can break the immersion to some degree if forced, but I think there's room for them. I absolutely do. Especially when,
and like
I don't mind it in the open world setting and it's at your own leisure and you can go do it. I don't mind if the sense of urgency feels broken, because it already was. It's open world. I'm going to meander off and find a cave over there with bandits for a shitty chest plate reward anyway. Why not let me wander into a tavern and play a game? Like, I don't care. I don't find it that different.
I found how about the arcade machine ones? I find those a lot in like FPSs. A lot. I find those to be probably the most enjoyable experience because they are completely random. CPR is probably the only one that's really bad. Is Cyberpunk.
What?
Not the game. The game plays fine, but as you were saying, the sense of urgency in that game is ridiculous. And
I thought you were talking about the actual quality of the arcade games.
No,
like,
the quality of the arcade is
the one
awesome.
where you play as Roach. Oh my god, that is like the best.
Yeah, it's
like
really
the horse
cool.
from The Witcher.
Yeah. And you're just like constantly jumping things and the levels get faster and there's more. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
I've spent...
so good.
Like, I've actually, like, hit the, like, maximum score threshold thing to win the highest prize in that machine.
Jeez.
So, I get that. But, like, I like that at no point in that game do they tell you about the arcade machines or suggest you go play them. It's just there. It lets you do it
at your own... sense of discovery.
And it's like, I'm pretty sure in Doom 3... there is a Doom 1 arcade machine somewhere.
Yeah, Wolfenstein 2 did the same thing. They had all of the whole Wolfenstein 3D was inside of Wolfenstein 2 in an arcade machine. You could play the entire game through.
And like, I think that's fun from the perspective of it's more an Easter egg than like an actual mini game. I think my problem with mini games always comes down to having it forced on me or being guilted for giving me the option to say piss off.
Well, where do you sit with challenges like, say, the Fallout hack system? Because that in itself is a mini game.
Yeah.
That can go to hell. Anything that is like you need to be able to do this to get through a door. I don't mind a puzzle as long as they're unique each time. I don't want to do connect the dots to get through a door for a story
Bioshock mission. Fucking...
Oh, Bioshock, yeah, the fluids. Yeah.
Shove that. Absolutely not.
I actually liked that, but only because I really liked that game back in the day when we didn't have anything else to play.
I
could stand the Skyrim lockpicks by this much because they were easy.
So the Skyrim lockpicks are actually also the Oblivion lockpicks and the Fallout 3 lockpicks and the Fallout New Vegas lockpicks and the Fallout 4 lockpicks.
They're the Bethesda lockpick.
Yeah. So
cool.
That mechanic's the same. What Justin's sort of leaning more towards is there's a hacking minigame, and it's actually referenced in the Fallout TV show, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, that was cool.
But it's basically you're given a string of characters, and there's just kind of gibberish on the screen with maybe 10, 15 words, and you select a word, and it tells you how many of those characters are correct, and
that's it.
How many attempts you've got
from
left.
There how many are correct, and try and find another word and guess which letters line up to be in the correct space. So
now, I have feelings about this. One is, at its core, it should annoy the living piss out of me. But I kind of like that kind of cryptography stuff, and I'm actually really good at figuring it out. Like, it's just something that naturally clicks with me because I'm a weirdo. So I don't mind it just because I'm so good at it. It just kind of doesn't really exist for me, and I find it like a little bit of fun. But if someone told me that they thought it was absolute dog shit, I'd be like, you know what, that is completely fair.
Yeah,
And
but then, you know, what would be the alternative? That you just get your hack high enough and it works? Would that be satisfying at all at that point?
Not necessarily, but in saying that, like, where do you draw the line with these being mini games and not, like, so Bioshock is a good example because you're hacking, but the hacking is basically a pipe puzzle where you're watching fluid move through pipes.
Yeah.
That doesn't represent hacking at all in any aspect ever.
No.
Whereas understanding, so the concept behind the Fallout one actually makes sense. It's kind of like a brute force hack, but it's already given you different options available. So you're just guessing the password basically. And I don't think that's inherently quite so removed as its own minigame, because that's just a part of the world. Like, accessing a computer is still accessing a computer. It's like saying, oh, well, every time you read a terminal, that's a minigame. Like, just because it's not the core gameplay experience, that still is part of core gameplay. Whereas minigames I would usually consider like optional side content, or something that just seems like it's shoehorned in there, like Bioshocks. Like, Bioshocks is clearly not supposed to represent hacking, it's just a fun little minigame. But it
could have been done better.
Yeah. I would have much preferred it if it was something like you had to solve a puzzle because, you know, some weirdo artist dude locked a door and the only way to solve the physical mechanism was to get water from this location to this one in this time period. That would make sense from, like, and it sort of fits in with everything, and it kind of makes sense in a, like, if they explained it as a core gameplay mechanic. But how it's presented, at least from my memory, because I haven't played Bioshock in a while, it's just like move pipe, then door open. But that's the thing, is it's not even just doors, it's hacking anything is the little pipe minigame. Like, what the hell is that?
Seems a bit lazy in that regard then. Yeah. So it's one thing Bethesda did right. Well done.
Yeah, surprisingly. Bethesda I want to say pre-Skyrim. Yeah, pre-Skyrim Bethesda was pretty good. Skyrim was basically just Oblivion but refined. So I don't want to give them too much credit for Skyrim, but then pretty much after Skyrim it's just been so, you know.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride from there.
Yeah. We don't talk about the stars.
No. One I would like to touch on that we didn't go on was Borderlands. Borderlands has an interesting minigame, and I think it kind of fits in well.
Man, I'm lost. I'm trying to think. Is it the slot machines?
Yeah, the pokies.
Yeah, okay.
You can go have a little slap, but it's so relevant because it's a desolate world. There are a lot of people with downtime because you being a guy that runs around shooting stuff, that's not a common job. Vault hunters are rare. That's why you nearly get killed at the start of Borderlands 2, is because Handsome Jack's trying to get rid of all the Vault hunters. So you're the less common person, but people on like Pandora are crazy. So having slot machines that shoot out rare guns and iridium and stuff, that is perfectly on brand with the rest of the world. And again, completely optional. It doesn't really detract. It's quick. You know, there's no forcing you to do anything. It's just if you want to pop around and spend some money, there it is. I think that's probably a decent example too.
Yeah, very true.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But in saying that, I think we've kind of... Do you guys have any other examples of anything either good or
That's
bad?
the major bit.
No,
I think it's
Gwent was
fits
going to
in
be
with
the
the
hill I
world.
was going to die on. Like Gwent is the perfect example of how a minigame could be integrated into a game, and also just really well balanced as well. Like the game itself, standalone or inside of the Witcher, I think is better actually, to be honest. But it's just really well balanced. So that is your best example of how a minigame is at its prime, I think. Anyway.
Honestly, the only
I'd
way
like
they
to-
could improve it is if you could... Like, so I can't remember the Baron... Like, I haven't played The Witcher 3 in a long-ass time. So I can't
Yeah,
remember
it's
if
been
you
a
can
while
tell
for
the
me.
Baron to go himself when he asks you to play. If you can, not so bad. If you can't, then I have a minor gripe. But the rest
I think
of it...
the story-wise, though, I think you needed to try and build a rapport with the Baron. So the whole point of, you know, kicking it and having a game of Gwent was to sort of break the ice. So it was sort of tied in pretty well as far as story and everything else goes. It wasn't like, I'm going to stop doing everything I'm doing and saving the world because I'm just going to play a game of cards randomly in this bar. It was, I'm going to play a game of cards with this king to try and break the ice, to try and bring up the subject of X, I think, was what it was. It's been a long time for myself to... I want to play The Witcher now. That's the end result.
We've got
I
to
want to play
start
some
from
Gwent.
one. No, we've got to start at one.
One more end takeaway. How you don't do a minigame is release an entire world's worth of game that people really wanted, not us. People wanted it. And then leave something out of it so you can release a game on it later. Harry Potter and Quidditch.
Hogwarts
right,
Legacy?
You
Yes.
fucking weirdos. That is some weird shit to do. Everyone saw it coming, and anyone who buys it is a fucking sucker.
Yeah, it's some bullshit.
Idiot.
It is some bullshit. They should have at least given you a taste of it. Like maybe, I don't know, you did a couple of games, because I remember this even in the previous Harry Potter games, because even in the books and all the whole story, Harry only gets like, I don't know, 2 games in and then it's the fan basically every year anyway, or it gets shut down before it even happens. All they had to do was work out the mechanics around playing 2 games worth and then give you a bit of a taste, and that would have been enough for them to be like, oh, you like that? You like that? We got a game coming. Here it is. But they didn't give you anything. They just basically put an invisible wall up and went, oh, look, we did build it, but we're not going to give it to you.
Yeah, they're like, you can
That's
fly
slimy.
around. There's a pitch.
Yeah.
There's a couple mini games to do in the pitch about like fast flying and You can't play.
Yeah,
Don't
that's
no,
slimy.
There's no Quidditch this year. It's unexplained reasons to do with the game coming out later.
Or
Yeah,
like
it's
considering I think PlayStation 1 introduced Quidditch. I mean,
Yeah, it
that's
was
just-
in the
that's
PlayStation
terrible.
1
Did.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the most important takeaway of all of this is fuck Harry Potter, it's shit.